Terry, it's great to see you. Let me just tell you a little bit about Terry. Terry is currently a hospice chaplain in Walla Walla, Washington. You've been there for 12 years as in that position, is that right?
That's right. That's right, yes.
Great. And as a soft-spoken listener, you told us that you are near the exact opposite of a preaching evangelist.
Yeah, that's
All
right.
Great. And then you lead Open Door Fellowship, which is an interdenominational support group for LGBTQ persons, where they may process their faith and orientation in an affirming community.
Yes.
Okay, and you host Clergy Cluster, a monthly breakfast for pastors and chaplains in the Walla Walla Valley that aims to be a safe space for progressive pastors.
That's right, yes.
Yes, us progressive pastors need shelter too. You also hold a Master's of Divinity degree from Andrews University, and you're ordained as a reverend in the United Church of Christ.
That's correct, yes.
And then you grow a garden, you run, and you travel. Mm-hmm. And then you put one more line in your bio that made Jasmine and I laugh out loud. But I think you were serious when you sent it to us, because this was the last line in the bio you sent us. Most importantly, he is happily single, but looking to date a hot guy for LTR. We've never gotten that in a bio before, Terry. You're the first, my friends. So I think LTR is long-term relationship. Is that right?
Relationship.
I got that one. Right. Okay, all right. Well, I love that you're happily single, but also looking for someone. Welcome to Paradox Church. You're fitting right in already.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so Terry, tell us a little bit about your background before you became a chaplain. Where did you grow up? What church was church a part of your life? And were you a pastor before you were a chaplain?
Yeah, I was actually born in San Francisco, and part of a conservative faith tradition, a world denomination, where my parents were employed, and my dad was a college professor, and that took him to Tennessee, where I grew up in Southeast Tennessee, and then I became a teacher, but a Bible teacher, and I spent some time in the churches or the church schools in Florida and also Central California, and I was just sold out on the mission of this world denomination. I was just like so very much part of my identity, part of my mission, part of my goal in life. God and the church were just like at one, and I was set out to carry on my fourth generation in that denomination.
Fourth generation in that denomination, and you said your parents were employed by the denomination, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
And then you were a Bible teacher for how long?
For about 6 years or so.
Okay, 6 years.
Yes.
And you were teaching high school at that point? Junior high?
Junior high and high school combined, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Well, I was starting to know some reoccurring situations where, there just the I wasn't out, but people would ask me a question if I was gay, and I would say no. Maybe I wasn't probably covering it up too much, and I was just really. I just noticed a lot of things ended without much closure, without much reason, and became very discouraged about that. And like a last straw was in Fresno, where I was just let go in the middle of the school year. And people were crying. They couldn't tell me why, but it was later on I discovered it was more about these things. Yeah. And so I was like, I was really bothered by that. But at the same time, there was someone who was like, I'm gay, but I'm also Christian, and can you help me with sorting this stuff out? And I was like, man, I feel so inauthentic here. I'm suddenly worried about my employment, my life, career, my investment in this mission of this church and such. And and here I can't really disclose. So as I was helping him, I was also helping myself and gathering resources for myself and sharing it with him.
Did you know at the time that you were queer?
Yes, I was. It was in the 90s,
Okay.
and I'd probably say MacGyver made me queer, because I.
Can you say that again? Because I think it kind of dropped on all of us. I think I heard it correctly. Say it one more time.
It was MacGyver. It was.
It was MacGyver.
I tell you what, when I was a kid, I just loved MacGyver. It was awesome. And then, so, there you go. What can I do?
All right, so you knew you were queer and you had somebody asking for help, and you were able to help them while also helping yourself.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you're in Fresno at the time.
Yeah,
And you
that's
got
right.
let go, and then you went to Walla Walla from there, or?
Well, I started. I looked at some teaching hospitals, and I heard about chaplaincy, hospital chaplaincy, and so maybe that might be a good fit or so. And I got some interviews in the Bay Area, and then UCSF Medical Center said, "Hey, we want you." And it was through the story of helping my friend, because I didn't share that story with the others, but I imagine that might have been the to be able to help a gay person, and so that was I was with other people of other denominations, working with them, and there were 10 of us and it was quite an amazing experience.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What is a chaplain for people who aren't familiar with what chaplains do in the healthcare world?
Chaplains are basically pastors that have some special training in the healthcare field or some kind of institution. It could be military, it could be correctional or so, but basically a chaplain is someone who serves by an institution that's not a church. And they minister to all faith traditions or so in that capacity.
And you're employed as a chaplain by the hospital typically, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you started doing that at UCSF, you got your training. How long is the training to become a chaplain?
4 units of clinical pastoral education.
Okay. And a unit is how long? Is that a semester?
Yes, for like a whole year.
Okay.
And in this case, my supervisors were identified as bi and lesbian, and just the free-spirited nature of just being introduced to different departments at UCSF Medical Center where people just said, yeah, I'm part of the gay community, or so. It's like, man, look how free-spirited and so relaxed they are.
Yeah, I'll bet UCSF was a lot different than where you got your seminary degree, which was in Berrien Springs, Michigan. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
I'll bet UCSF was a little different with that, with the supervisors and the teachers you had.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and there's like, I'd say there were 10 of us, student chaplains, and then the other 10 were full-time chaplains, and they told us, to be bold and be daring, or just share something about yourself, as you introduce. And I was like, oh, you know what? So I said, well, I just want to let you guys know I'm gay, and and please don't tell any Seventh-day Adventists. And I said that in front of everyone, and it was like, well, it was a safe place. For many of them, didn't even know what a Seventh-day Adventist was, to share. But from that point onward, it was awesome to have like some formalized integration of my orientation with my ministry work and such, which a lot of people don't have even today. It was just incredible that I was able to do that.
That's great. That's great. So Seventh-day Adventist is the denomination you grew up in, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the denomination I grew up in as well. And I just wanted to say, if anybody's here who didn't grow up in that denomination, this is a story that comes across a lot of the different denominations where people grow up and feel that way.
That's right, yeah. And, go ahead.
I was going to say, so you were at UCSF, and then you graduated. Do you graduate from a chaplaincy program?
Yes, yeah, we have a memorial, or we have a service or so, and then they said, well, guys, it was 2008, 2009, and the economy was really bad in California, and they're there's no jobs in California. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm still gonna try, because so I tried hospitals like at West Hollywood or near the Castro, or places where I can date. and so and so, but nope, there wasn't any. But there was a position in Walla Walla for a chaplain at St. Mary's, and it's like, well, this is so odd and paradoxal. You know, we like the word paradox, because it's like it's kind of an Adventist enclave of sorts, like Loma Linda is here, and it's like, boy, that would be like the last place I'd want to go to right now. But yet it was like a green light, and I was like, okay. And it was not hired by their denomination. It was actually a Catholic hospital, which would not also be affirming. But the Catholic system was a non-discrimination policy. They had a very specific non-discrimination policy.
So what year was that you went to St. Mary's then?
That was 2009. And I always felt so relieved. Like when the first thing that they said in that in that orientation, employee orientation, was that there's no discrimination on sexual orientation. Oh, wow. And I was just so relieved. And then, you know, my supervisor happened to be lesbian, and she was like, "Well, you're in good company here," and she you know, so yeah.
That's great. So did you still identify as the Christian denomination you grew up in was Seventh-day Adventist, or were you not, at that point where you're like, oh, I'm not associated with that anymore?
I was still identify, and part of that is that really, you know, there are a lot of conservative communities that are very tight-knit, and the level of community can be extremely high and very privileged in that regard. And so to let go of that would be really to let go of all I know and comes with networking and such. So that was one part of it. But also I had a heart for the tribe that raised me. And so I found spiritual energy with people who were at this this college there that were theology majors, and they're like, they were being referred to me and to talk to me. There's like, hey, I'm gay and I'm going through this theology program, and I don't know what my career is going to be like. Can you help?
And what would you say to them?
Well, I would share them about our healthcare chaplaincy and such, and also to plan for the plan for the worst, hope for the best, sort of thing, because if people are called to a certain place, God's going to be with them, and they're going to make a huge difference in those spaces, so long as you have a space of yourself that can fill you. Don't depend on that space to fill you, because it won't.
So you are ordained in the United Church of Christ, right?
Yes, finally.
So how did you go from where you were in 2009 working in Walla Walla to the United Church of Christ? Like, did you leave? What was the process there?
Well, I would say that my grassroots ordination, so to speak, was at a small church in Berkeley, California, and it was at a time where I invited some of my LGBTQ friends from UCSF, and they're very curious about the world church community I was a part of, and they took part in this worship service much like this, and there were students from Berkeley University there. There's also elderly people that were running the church. And there's this one guy at the end of the service says, "Terry's leaving tomorrow. Let's come over to lay hands on him to anoint him for his ministry." And that was so very meaningful to me, because it represented the demographic that I would meet there in Walla Walla, and I'll never forget that. And that was that calling would just help me go through some of the challenges and discouragements that I would go for the next 10, 14 years, something like 12 years, something like that.
Yeah, so take us through those 10 to 14 years. Like, what happened after you started working at St. Mary's, and what did you start to see and experience as you worked in this role as a chaplain?
Well, in the role of, in a hospice chaplaincy or so, or
Did you start hospice chaplaincy right away, like when you started working at St. Mary's?
I was a healthcare chaplain or hospital chaplain, and the particular part that really touched my heart was being with people in end of life care that didn't have a chance to move into hospice. That if they were to move to hospice, they could possibly end their life abruptly, and so we would kind of make a hospice-like service for them, and really that space was very sacred, very personal, very intimate, and really encapsulating love by all aspects. It just really moved me to like, maybe I could do this more often through hospice, and so that's what moved me to hospice.
That's great. Now, you have left the larger denomination, is that right?
Yeah, for my support, yes.
So why did you leave? That's something that you wanted me to talk to you about. Like, why did you leave a global Christian denomination after spending so many years being trained into it?
I think healthcare chaplaincy and hospice opens up my my understanding of who I belong to, who is part of my church, and when I get the best seat in the house because I get to listen to many different faith perspectives, and I get to ask them stories about their life and how their faith has evolved, and then to honor and respect that through their hospice experience. And so that was amazing. So the whole thing of hospice chaplaincy is also breaks down barriers. We don't wave any particular banners of any faith tradition. So that's wonderful too. And then also being a part of the marginalized in Walla Walla, that opened up spaces too that from across denominations that were also experiencing, hey, Terry, I was on a praise team, and then when I came out, I'm no longer able to serve on the praise team. What can we do here? There's others that also did similar work, but they were told to you can only serve in the back and not be seen or so. And I had my own experience where, like, you're talking about, like, as I was seeking denominational endorsement, that was a challenge. I had to be active in a church, and to be active in a SDA church, the endorsement officer talked with other pastors. Terry needs to serve somewhere, and it was such a hard thing. I mean, I could not even sing on the praise team. I was told by the elders on a Wednesday night that said, you're welcome to be here, but you can't be up front because of your beliefs on homosexuality. And I knew it was more than that because there's a lot of people that could probably have different beliefs. But it's because I was gay, but they couldn't say that, right? And so I realized, man, this is. I tried to stick it out, and I can share stories about that. They would check into the Sabbath school classes and see if I was praying, and if I, and then close the door to make sure I wasn't. Things like that. But then, and and I guess it kind of made. I was still, the doors were still open in that regard because there are a lot of endorsement officers, like, they're military chaplains, and they're having to deal with don't ask, don't tell issues. When Obama lifted that up, that opened up a ministry for them in the military, and so they had a heart for that, but they knew what they're coming against. And eventually my name came up through the highest level in the North American division, the GC, and I was trying to speak to the NAD leader at that time, and the North American division leader. And there are a number of people asking us, have you heard that Terry wants to talk to you? And other people are messaging him, Terry wants to talk to you. So he's like, this Adventist chaplain minister, get Terry over here and let's have a conversation. So it just happened within 2 days. I asked my boss, can I leave for this? And then they flew me out to the GC, and I had a conversation, general conference headquarters. I was there asking me questions about, what's my theology on homosexuality? I was like, I really don't want to. I'm here because I'm a hospice chaplain. But I said, this is what I believe. This is what the church believes. But can I tell you how I gave care to someone who was not affirming? And I shared about an experience in hospice where there's this person's like, Terry, we as a couple, they had a loved one in one of the nursing homes, and they're saying, our Methodist church is now having people up front and playing guitars, and they're queer, and we don't feel very comfortable with that. And can you help us find a church that doesn't do this, that's more biblical? Yeah. And I graciously say, hey, here's churches here, there's churches here. And there's like, oh, thank you so much, chaplain, I appreciate this. They had no idea that I was gay.
Wow. Yeah, and it's almost like a relief when they go to those churches, because then we don't have to deal with them as much, right? But I tell you that because when we talk about these different things, when it comes to affirming churches, what have you found? Because I know, like you said, you're ordained in the UCC church. Mm-hmm. We were the second affirming church here in Redlands in 2018. The first affirming church was UCC, which was 1998. Oh, okay. So when we think we're progressive, we're about 2 decades behind whatever's happening just down the road at that wonderful, wonderful UCC church. Yeah. Like, what have you found being part of UCC and how has that changed your perspective on church?
Oh, I love their idea of seeing every denomination or every church as an expression of the body of Christ. And it's not a way of one over someone else. They're very, very conscious about saying that we're better than you in some way. and just having that. And they're also conscious about overcoming fundamentalism. And what I mean by fundamentalism, even in our own lives, like how we might possess fundamentalism in some way, which is a form of intolerance, or a form of saying that the other is somehow bad, saying how, or maybe having a theology that could harm someone else, that might make us feel good or be in a better situation, but that theology harms another group of people. So there's that. We welcome all of you, but let's let go of your fundamentalism, because we need to overcome it ourselves. And
now, as a hospice chaplain, you deal with death on a regular basis and the conversations about death, I assume, right?
Yeah.
What have you learned being a hospice chaplain for several years now? What have you learned about God being that close to death and having death as part of your daily life, essentially?
Yeah, like I've seen many people take their last breath, and I consider an honor and a privilege to be there at every moment there. I would say Yes, I guess ideas about the end of life are still relevant in my work, and so I think about how other people share, and it. I guess perhaps what it's done is it's caused me to hold my own views very, very lightly, and I start to realize, okay, yeah, okay, my view might be found in the Bible, but so is another person's view found in the Bible too. Like you find Moses and the Transfiguration and other parts that say that you're alive when you're dead, and then you find other parts where say you're asleep when you're dead. And so so when you think about that, it's like, well, is this on the final exam?
Right?
And
Right?
when you think about final exams, I'm not sure if God really has a final exam on these things.
I love that. What do you think God has instead?
I think that whatever we do when it comes to belief, when it comes to theology and such, what's more important is how does it move you to become a more loving and gracious person?
Yes, yes. Amen.
And I want to celebrate however way that you come to know God. It may not be my way. You have a different experience. You have a different way. And if it's going to cause you to embrace all around you, and if it's going to cause you to like embrace the people that were other to you, and you want to be more loving to those other people, my goodness, I want to celebrate that.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice back at the beginning of your chaplaincy career,
Yeah.
or you can go back further to the beginning of your professional career.
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give yourself?
Oh, I would say, I don't want to. I think holding fast to my belief is not as important. I've been taught to hold fast to my beliefs, but I think it's the other way around in the sense that I want to get to know the infinite God. And yes, like we all have ways that we express God in the finite. And I might have some like very specific things that, okay, yeah, I believe Jesus is coming again. I believe this, that, and the other. But whatever I believe, if what I believe doesn't come true, it's okay. And it's okay. And because my heart is not there. My heart isn't not in that belief that of a certain teaching, but my heart is aligned with the infinite God. That's where my heart wants to be, in the infinite. And that means I'm ever growing with curiosity. My beliefs are constantly changing, and according to what I'm finding out about God through other people, through many different sources that we have, from the Bible, through human experience, through science. I want my theology to follow science, in the sense that science we have wonderful scientists that are able to observe things in nature, and then then the theologians can come along and make meaning behind it and purpose and such, and make it a beautiful thing. And I think that can carry on forever.
That's great. That's really beautiful. So often we think of death as being anti-God, right? Where it's like death is the thing that's introduced once humanity sins against God in Genesis 3.
Yeah.
And we think of death as like the antithesis of who God is. Here at Paradox, our mission is to see and embrace Jesus Christ in all. Have you found God to be present even in death? And if so, what does that look like?
Oh, yes. I would find that death is a relief in so many, more times than often. When I do my condolence calls for the families after the time of death or so, more times than not, there's like death has been a blessing. It's been a relief from the suffering that they've been seeing their loved ones go through. Death has been, they're now at peace. They're at peace so that I can be at peace. And then even before death, like around the time of death or just before, that's an amazing time. That's an opportunity for us, for each other to say, I love you, I forgive you. Will you forgive me? It's a time for potential reconciliation with family and friends. It's a time, to be able to let go. It's time to say it's okay, for families to say it's all right. We're going to be just fine. And often when people say it's okay, it's going to be just fine, that's when people are able to let go.
Yeah. Pointing to the screen because the song. Sometimes we
that
don't even
was,
plan this
that
stuff.
was a divine thing because I was like, if I can like mention the song "Let It Go," I was thinking about the Disney song.
Yeah, of course. If you knew this one before, you're way underground.
But then you're like, oh, there's a song "Let It Go." That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that song that musicians really wanted to do, and sometimes it just works out that way, right?
See, God is with us.
Yes, exactly. So often, one thing that we try to talk about here is we want to become the person that God has created us to be. When you look back at your life and who you've been and what you've been through, who do you feel like God has created you to be? And how have you helped, bring about God's kingdom on this planet?
I've always been considered a gentle person, and that's not always been esteemed very well in my youth. And some of the expectations of what a man should be, that kind of thing. And so I find that has really been helpful in my ministry for that. Also, the ability to hold back and instead of saying things, to be able to hold back and listen. That's been great for people who were like me perhaps in their youth, or even at age 35 or even 65. Hey, I need someone to talk to, and this game of being a straight guy is just not. It's causing me lots of conflict. So being that safe space, and Open Door Fellowship has been awesome. It's just been born out of my house, and there was like someone who was Jewish, who was actually attending a secular university. It's like, I want to be affirmed by my faith. I'm affirmed by my trans identity, but I want to be affirmed by my faith too. And then there's someone from the Christian university down on the other side of town. It was like, I want to be affirmed for my orientation. I'm affirmed with my faith, but my orientation. Yeah. And then, these people come together and to hold a Friday gathering at my house in the living room. And that's just sort of moved into other spaces as it's grown. And people come and go. So, while it doesn't always keep queer people in, with employment opportunities and such, I hope that there could be more employment opportunities to keep people there. But it's been a wonderful ministry beyond hospice. That I may not be under some sort of organization for it, but it's been a great place to reach out for pastors who couldn't. Queer people wouldn't feel safe to talk to other pastors, and pastors wouldn't feel safe because of their jobs to nurture them too.
I want to close by asking you if someone here is discouraged because they're facing death, or whether it's a death of a loved one or they've got their own diagnosis. What would you say to that person as a way to encourage them, or to, as a chaplain? What is it that you normally say to them, and what would you say to them today?
So if someone can you ask the question again?
Yeah, I can. If somebody has a family member that is, has a bad prognosis or is looking like things are going to end in death, what would you say to them to encourage them or to comfort them in this time of, uncertainty and just disease?
That God is in the midst of uncertainty. That God is closest to people when we don't have it all together. And it's in that place of humility that we are open to receiving love from many different ways. That I would say that would be the opportunity to experience a little heaven on earth. That's a time to talk with your families. It's like there could be a time when I may not be able to speak or ask for my needs. That's a time when they're talking. That's a time to ask, what kind of music do you want to play when you're in bed there? What kind of readings would you like to have heard? What are some what are some stories? What are some books? Things that are religious or non-religious. And then we have the opportunity for our dying loved one to be able to love them as best we can, given that. And that's the wonderful thing about the end of life, is an opportunity to really, really love.
Wow, Terry, thank you so much. Your wisdom and insight has just meant so much to me this morning, and I get the sense it meant a lot to people who are here today. Thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.